Okay, go for it.
Hello, and welcome to our Behind the Glass panel. I'm Mira, I'm co-president of 971, and I'm here today talking to Sabina, Austin, and Bailey, all members of 971's drive team. We're really excited to have you here. We have some questions that we're going to ask them, and if you have any questions you'd like to hear them answer, feel free to drop them in the Slido, which you can find the link to in the description. So as I said, I'm Mira. I'm co-president of 971. I'm going to be a senior, and on my time on the team, I've been involved in manufacturing, assembly, and strategy of competition. So now I'm going to open it to you three to introduce yourselves. If you could do name, your role on drive team, and how long you've been a part of it. Sabina, do you want to start?
Okay, yeah, sure, I can start. My name's Sabina. I have been a part of Drive Team pretty much the year after I joined. So I've been here since 2015, so about 5 years. I did human playering for 3 now, and manipulating or operating, whatever you want to call it, for 2. Yeah, and I just graduated, so I'm technically no longer part of the Drive Team, but I'm there in spirit always.
Hi, I'm Bailey. I'm going to be a senior next year. I was the driver on the drive team, and I've been on it for 2 years now. And 2020 should have been my second year driving, and it's been a lot of fun.
And I'm Austin. We were trying to work out when I joined the drive team, but I'm the coach at this point. I actually was driver back in 2007, but that's getting to be a little while ago.
All right, awesome. So let's get started with, why did you want to be a part of drive team? What motivated you to join or try out?
Okay, Bailey's me. Oh. Do you want me to go?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. You can start, Sabina.
It was a long time ago. I'm a lot older now in my perspective. But I remember the first initial thing of wanting to be on drive team was it looked like something really fun, and I was really small and I didn't do any technical at that point. I was jumped along with my brother. So my first, reminders of the robot were taking these really big balls. In my context, being 4'11", the yoga balls from 2014 were huge, right? Enormous. Robot could have killed me with one of those. They're a lot smaller now. And it was just like, the fun, athleticism. I don't know how to do anything else. And it evolved just like a joy and a family thing.
Yeah, kind of similar to what Sabina said. It just looked like a lot of fun, and like you get to control the robot and like interact with the field and the robot and stuff. So you get to directly contribute to like your team's performance at a competition. And that's like what the whole season's about. So it's fun to watch it from the stands and be like, I built that, but it's a lot more fun to be down on the field and like looking at it in action.
And then I joined drive team quite a while ago, and I was initially I was frustrated at you're watching from the sidelines and seeing all the things that everyone's doing wrong, and you feel so powerless. And so I was like, okay, I want to help fix this. I think we can do better. And so I joined and helped coach. And of course, it's a whole lot harder than it looks from the outside. But after a while, you start to pick up on it and get better and better at it, and get to work with a bunch of fun people. So that helps balance out the stress, because it's definitely a stressful way to do a competition.
Yeah, those are all great stories. So I think sort of the way I want to go through this is like walking through a competition season as being part of drive team. And so that all starts with like, how do you practice and prepare for a competition?
Well, first of all, you need to build your robot. So when we're not on the drive team, like we need to get a robot built. So none of us have just specific roles for the drive team only. We all do design, manufacturing, assembly, and all that. But then once we have a robot ready to go, we do like drive practices on the weekends and on our late night meetings. We sometimes practice at our own facilities, and other times we can go practice with 254 over at their field. because they're very nice and let us practice with them. But you want to get as much time running the robot as you can so that the humans know how to use it and you can find any flaws with the robot itself that you can fix.
One of the things that we don't necessarily talk about a lot, but we work very hard in the off season to help prepare. So it's not always just during the season. I can't remember like all the stats for all of our drivers, but I'm sure Bailey had competed like in 2 or 3 competitions before he ever was on a full in-season competition. So that's like off seasons like Chizzy Champs or Cal Games or the Madtown Throwdown. And that helps us both on the, as people on the drive team get better, and it also helps us as a team find the right drivers and see how they react under pressure.
And in addition to the concept of having the drivers practice in the off season, we also have like, we're not just like, you look pretty good, we're just going to make you driver. It's like there's a whole, process and practice that goes along with that. So plenty of people are getting stick time and like room to improve whether or not they end up being on a drive team in the off season or, in real life.
Yeah, do you want to go a little bit more into that? Like, how do we select people? Like, what does that process look like?
That's probably me. We keep it a little bit opaque on purpose, but it's
what you're willing to share.
Yeah, but it's a lot about our goal before we make a selection is to understand the various drivers and manipulators and what it will be like to work with them in a competition. And so that's where a lot of these off seasons come into play, because like by the time Bailey or Sabina or any of our other drive team members had ever been to a competition, like a real in-season competition, we knew a lot about how they performed under stress. And you can also watch people like see, first time when someone grabs the sticks, they're okay or they're good, and then over time, do they get better or not? How do they respond to coaching? Do they freak out during competition? Like we've had drivers who drop the sticks and back away during matches when something goes wrong. It's hard to train that out of people. So you're trying to understand people and see how they're going to perform so we can field the best team to represent 971 out there on the field.
Yeah, so in competition, what does a typical match cycle look like? Like, how do you prepare, and sort of like what do you do after the match?
Well, before each match, we run a functional on the robot. So we run the wheels, we run all the intakes, the elevators or whatever, the shooter, whatever we need that year, and make sure everything is good to go, check if fresh batteries in the robot. And then once we get on the field, before the match starts, we double check with our partners, like what's the strategy? We're going to do this, you're going to do that. And then after the match, we usually run another functional in between those matches. And then we will watch a game film that someone in our stands records for us. They run a little SD card down to us and we watch it on a laptop and we kind of discuss like what we did well, what we can improve on. And it's pretty much how we cycle through each match.
So anything to add to that?
Yeah, Bailey implied this, but when we check the strategy, we don't just decide the strategy in line. We have a whole group of people who does an incredible job to go talk to all the teams and figure out what the strategy is going to be and how that's going to look. And then the worst thing you can do is get into a match and think you all agree on what the strategy is, and turns out you didn't. So that's where we're very careful to double check and make sure everyone's understanding of the strategy is correct. And then also kind of watch as we go through the match and see if everyone's going in the right direction or if we need to change it. Anything to add, Sabina?
I mean, that's pretty accurate. I mean, that's like fantastically accurate. I mean, in some years there's like also a human player check of the like physical field. It's, sometimes there's matches at Einstein where they, left the box there during 2017. They like called for a rematch for it, or like 2019 they had a whole bunch of problems with the frisbees or the discs not falling all the way down. So there's a certain amount of like, you need to know what could happen because of your preparedness outside of the competition to be able to be double checking all of your work and talking to the field about it, because they're amazing people. So.
Yeah, going back to what Austin said, like What happens during a match when something doesn't go as you planned or someone like isn't following the strategy the way you expected them to do?
Well,
I guess,
generally
do you
that
have any
becomes
like
my
do you have any
problem.
like funny or like interesting examples of that you want to share?
Oh, we've seen this go both ways. Sometimes you run in, you're like, okay, we got a strategy. It seems okay. I think we're using our partners to the best of our abilities, but I don't know how this is going to play out. And then it really gels and everything comes together. And I think one of those matches we were running back and forth across the field in 2019, filling up rockets, and that was a lot of fun. And then other times you get out there and you're like, okay, so you're gonna work over here, we're gonna work over there, we're not gonna get in each other's way. And then they're on your side. And now you got to figure out what to do. Do we react and go somewhere else? Do we run over and try and help them? We try and work with them, figure out what needs to happen. Those are the tough calls, and you kind of got to look at each other and figure out what's most likely to succeed and make a decision. And you don't really have a lot of time to get it right, so you're going to get some of them wrong. And it's almost better to be decisive and wrong than it is to take forever and be correct.
Mhm.
I think of some of the other. Oh, the worst matches are the ones where you go out there with this great plan and the robot breaks. And like, now what?
Yeah.
So we've had to do some pretty crazy strategies where I think Bailey had a frisbee in a hatch panel in our elevator had failed, and so he struggled in quotes to score it for 50 seconds while he was heavily defended. And we just kept him occupied and freed up. And, at that point in time, once we got the strategy under play and we've made that transition, you run over to your partners and say, so yeah, we're down. Like, you guys are going to have to pull through, maybe provide some suggestions or try and change up who's on offense, who's on defense, and just really communicate what's going on there.
Adding on to what Austin said, there were a few matches in our Utah regional playoffs where the robot either broke or my drive controller broke. And we were, I think, probably the highest offensive potential robot at that competition. But when that happened, we were probably one of the lowest because we couldn't control the robot. But the key was you don't let the other alliance know that, because our partner could do pretty well if they were undefended. They were still scoring well enough to win. We just needed to not let the defense robot get over to them, because then we couldn't really score anything. So we just had to stick to our plan, make it look like we were still good to go, and we ended up winning with a pretty beat up robot.
Yeah, so like more specifically on that, we have a viewer on Slido asking, how do you train real-time decision making into drivers for when things come up like that mid-match?
I'm not really sure you can train that, really. That's kind of just some people have it and some people don't.
Yeah, that's like people say there's a fight or flight. It's more like a fight or flight or freeze. And there's some people that just freeze, so you're trying to look for someone else.
And some of that comes back to driver selection, as Sabina alluded to.
Mhm.
Some of our better drivers in the past have been the ones that when the robot's sitting there and they got a fresh battery and we're not really practicing, but we're kind of chatting off on the side, they're the ones playing with the ball and trying to see if they could balance it between the thing or put the ball back up into the human player zone, or herd balls around because the elevator's broken and we don't know what to do about it. And just the ones that are playing and being super creative. And we found over time that those type of people really excel in the unstructured environment out on the field. Now they're rare. I think we get one every 4 years, probably.
Convenient.
Yeah. We get it like every 4 or 5, which is not quite often enough, but yeah.
We have another question asking, how do you approach performance analysis and improvement in between matches and in between regionals?
Good question.
I can speak specifically to the in-between regionals thing.
Sure.
I know that, especially I remember in 2019, we kind of had a little bit of a problem with like our robot's really small, is pretty easy to get pushed around, and we were kind of not worried about defense because it's fast. And then we hit Utah with some pretty big hitters in terms of defense. And that's when we realized, like, going up until champs, like I remember driving the defense bot against Bailey plenty. You see it, the footage is available, right? So you just take that time to really look at how you performed, and then also how you performed with other people. That was a problem on the small.
And you can look at it, it's really a question of how do we improve the number of pieces we score? How do we be more efficient and waste less time? And so you can watch videos, and if you're looking for those things, you can find them. Like, oh, hey, we sat there for 3 seconds waiting for Sabina to go find the ball. Like, well, that was a mistake. I don't think we did that very often.
No, we did not.
So that's a good thing, right? So we're looking for those opportunities in the video and both live and as we practice, and try and figure out how we can cut time down. And like some of our practice drills, we've gone and said, okay, how long does it take to fill a rocket? It will time you. And then let's try a different strategy. What happens if you load on the left side rather than the right? How does this impact us? Does this slow us down? Does this speed us up? Hey, Bailey, I want you, instead of turning around, I want you to drive past and then reverse. Or, let's try different options and see if these improve our time or make it slower. And that helps you a lot. And then unfortunately, some of this is just like, you had a match and you had something that went really well, and you go watch the video and try and figure out why it went well, like what worked. Or you have a really bad match and you can kind of compare that and try and figure out what didn't go so well. Don't do that again.
And for the in between regionals, sometimes you have to look at it and be like, is our robot design hindering us, or is it our drive team that's not filling the capacity of the robot?
Yeah.
Because you can have your drive team practice all they want and get your robot to 100% efficiency. But if that robot's ceiling isn't higher than another robot, there's nothing you can do about it. So some of it is being like, do we sacrifice drive practice time for building a better intake onto it, and then practicing a little bit with that going into the new competition and trying to be better with a different robot kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And another fun one to add to that is sometimes you can get speed ups in software. So if Bailey does the same 3 things, or Sabina, or someone does the same 3 things over and over and over, and we can make a button for that. How do we automate that? If this is slow or hard, can we put some software behind that to change how the robot performs? Not always a solution, but it's definitely one of the tools that we have at our disposal.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, going in kind of a different direction. What skills will you be looking to work for on Drive Team while meeting remotely?
I don't know if we've thought through this.
The human player should be working out during quarantine.
You can play some Mario Kart online or something.
So I guess the answer would be we'll get back to you on that one. What things does the 971 Drive Team look for in a good alliance partner? Outside of the robot itself.
Someone who is flexible.
Yeah, communication, flexibility. If you're working as a team, you need to be working as a team. You can't be, a leader in kind of that way. You need to have one person who's kind of making the official big decision, or you're gonna have a lot of discourse.
And on the communication side, we like to know that if you say you're going to do, an alliance partner is going to do X and they deliver X, exactly what they said, that's amazing. We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And if it's not going according to plan, they come tap us on the shoulder or yell over, and we're like, oh shoot, we got to replan. But it's easy to work with someone who communicates well, because there's not a lot of time out there.
Any tips for maintaining Drive Team morale during competition?
Snacks.
Snacks.
Snacks are good.
You will see me dancing at any competition. There is video everywhere.
I guess another related question would be how do you deal with being on Drive Team under pressure in elims or higher stakes matches?
You just kind of got to trust what got you there. Like, you don't have to try anything new. You don't get too fancy. Like, okay, we're good at filling up the rocket. We can go do the rocket. Or like, we're a good shooter robot. We don't need to go try to spin the little wheel of fortune all the time. We just need to stick to our game plan. It's been good enough to get us to Einstein's or Elims or whatever. So as long as we can execute well, we should be able to come out on top. You just got to trust your preparation.
I think also most people who compete, for the few people that get nervous, like I know I do, a way that you can calm yourself down or release your energy or something. Hopefully you pick that up along the way. If not, experiment.
And having watched a couple of drivers go through this, generally the first competition for every driver, they really worry about it and stress about it and really want to succeed. And that's great, except it ends up hurting their performance. And I've generally found that when they realize that if they just have fun and go out and play and do their best and leave it all out there on the field, then they'll actually do better than if they're worried. It's almost counterintuitive. You just kind of got to let go and do your best and not worry about it, and you'll end up where you end up, and generally it's better than if you stress about it. I know Campbell went through that transition 2 drivers ago. He was very stressed initially, and you could see him during a limbs tense up. And then when he finally realized that he just needed to play his own game, he got way more relaxed and did way better.
Yeah, he even danced with me. That was a really big thing. He would not dance with me at all. I remember the beginning of this season, he was like, no dancing. That's not happening. No. We have footage of him doing a little dance at SVR. He danced. It happened. He got less stressed.
And at some level, I view it as one of my responsibilities to help shield our drive team from the stress. So if people have a problem with how things went on the field, it's not, don't take that to our drive team. Take that to me, and I will filter it and help protect them at some level. Because if you have 100 people coming and telling you to do a bad job that last match, it's really hard to remain positive and do your best in the next one.
At competition, are the drive team members also working on the robot? Or are they just focused on driving?
If he wants to answer this, he can.
It depends on who it is and what they do.
Yeah, there's kind of been a recent shift, because I know that Campbell was definitely, I remember him working on the robot and stuff when he was driver, but not super heavily. I think we kind of made like a change where driver and manipulator try and stay more so away from the robot. I know at Champs this past year, we kind of made a decision where it was like, you two are debrief, don't worry about the robot. I know I worked on the robot, but I don't have as high of a stress job as driver or manipulator do. So it was kind of separating them and letting them relax and not have to think about all
and that helps them like stay focused on their job.
Yeah, because when you have a quick match turnaround like at Einstein's, you only have like 5 minutes before your next match. So you can, like, if me and our manipulator have to go work on the robot the whole time, then we don't know what we did well in that match. So we need to be watching the film review. And if we've been working on the robot all season, that means whatever like role we were filling is now voided. So somebody isn't fixing that part of the robot. So I think it's best to just have dedicated pit crew members and your drive team kind of as a hands-off approach between matches.
We pull that off up until everything breaks incredibly catastrophically. It's all hands on deck. But those are always the special matches. Those are rough.
Going back to like working with your alliance partners and strategy, what are some specific things you want to make sure are decided before the match?
Who's doing what objective, and if a predictable challenge comes, like if someone's intake is prone to breaking, even if it's working right now, if there's a high likelihood that something's going to go wrong, you plan ahead of time. Like if this happens, we're going to switch our game plan right away. And a lot of that just comes down to the drive coaches being able to talk and communicate quickly.
I think also, we have our wonderful strategy members, right? And they're kind of going through almost everything with the other team, it might not be in detail of what they're grabbing first, but they're pretty much making sure that we're all on the exact same page. Especially with some years like Human Players Matter, 2018, it was like you kind of wanted yours in the back to press the power-ups or whatever. And so every aspect, no matter how little, is important. It's just like there are some big ones that the drive coach will double check at the very end, right? So making sure you're, like as Bailey said, doing the right objective is like a big thing that everyone needs to be unanimous on.
And we've found over the years that there's some spaces that if you put two robots in one spot trying to score on the same thing, that generally goes poorly. So the big ones that I like to see are, we know where we're supposed to be and we know where our partner's going to be, roughly. Doesn't need to be all that precise, but enough that we're not going to get in each other's way. And if we need to exchange something or transition through those spaces, we have a plan so we're not going to collide.
Do you have a different approach to reviewing a match when it's after a match that went well versus a match that like maybe didn't go as expected? Or is it like always the same?
Not really. You really have to treat them all kind of the same. Because if you get in the mindset of like, oh, that match went well, we don't have to watch the film, then like you're only hurting yourself in the long run. Because even in good matches where you get all 4 ranking points and you filled up your rocket or whatever, there's still little things that you can improve on. And later those little details might come back to bite you if you don't really hammer them out when you can. And if you like get down on yourself after a poor match and try to overwork yourself watching the match 20 times in a row, like looking at all your small mistakes and over critiquing yourself, then you're also not doing yourself any favors, because you're just going to get down on yourself and you're going to perform pretty poorly in the next match anyways.
Do you have anything to add, either of you? Okay.
Bailey
We
nailed it.
have a couple more, like, I guess, fun questions. So the first one is, what's been your favorite robot to be part of a drive team for?
In-season robot?
Not necessarily. You can pick an off-season and in-season robot if you want.
Well, I've driven 1 off-season and 1 in-season robot, so that works well for me. Tachyon, our 2019 competition robot, was really fun because it was super small and fast, so we could fly up and down the field with that. It was a high-scoring robot. But our 2018 Curiosity robot, I drove that at Madeira in that off-season. That thing was a tank, and it just could push anybody out of the way. So that was kind of on the different end of the scale, but that was also really fun to drive around with. I know Butterknife has a big place in Sabina's heart.
I know, I'm really having a lot of trouble not just plain out saying just like Butterknife. Butterknife, for those who don't know, is our defense robot, which is the base of a 2013 robot, which got built up to be our 2014 off-season robot with little arms, which then got taken off to become our absolutely chunky, hefty defense bot, which...
Do you want to explain why it got the name Butterknife?
Yeah, because it just can't quite cut it. And so, for this reason, Butterknife will be my heart and soul forever. But I'd have to say that I've had to pick not real, Butterknife is real. Butterknife is real. But if I had to pick, like an in-season robot, probably 2016, because it was just so beautiful to watch. It was a little bit of a pain, but it was really beautiful.
Yeah, 2016 was fun. We had some fun moments in 2014. Just that style of game, the open fields, and moving the balls between the robots created a bunch of really interesting plays, and it was kind of fun.
Do you have a most memorable match you've been in as part of Drive Team? And I guess why was it special or remarkable?
The most directly memorable ones are probably the ones where the robot went catastrophically wrong, because those really stay in your mind for a while. But the most the pinnacle of, I'd say, my driving career so far is when we tied I think it was a season high score in Elims at Champs last year, I think, in our Galileo division. It got broken a few minutes later, but we had the high score for a little bit, so that was fun.
I guess
You're
I
welcome
end
to
up.
share a couple if you can't decide on one.
Yeah, there was a memorable Cal Games match in like 2014 or something where we were like 40 seconds into the match and the scoring object was not on the field yet. And I was just sitting there like, what is going on? Like, why aren't we scoring yet? And I pieced together the human player didn't know they had to pick the ball up and walk it over. So you're like, you grab it, you walk over to them, you explain, come on, okay, pick the ball up, walk it over, okay, throw it there. We picked it up, ran it down the field, and then we had to coach him to pick the next one up. And it was an entertaining match. It was kind of wild. And then one of my other favorite matches was I think last year when we finally learned that if we just beat our heads against the same rocket, it wasn't going to work. And we started just playing fast and loose and scoring wherever we could. And all of a sudden, the robot opened up and it started scoring really well. And it was just really cool to see it all come together and actually start to be pretty competitive.
Yeah, it took
That
us
was
on
really
the
fun.
strategy side a little while to figure that out too.
Yeah, that was probably the match we figured it out is when we just tried it because we weren't getting the 4RP, and then we actually got the 4RP by not worrying about them.
Okay, I'd like to say for the record, I was not the human player during Cal Games in 2014. Wasn't my fault, I promise. And then I'd probably say Bailey and I were both driving each of the 2018 robots at Madeira, and we played against each other, and the autos went at the same time. And I wasn't doing anything, but man, that was beautiful. Wow. And then probably my first time human playing in 2015. I was so small. I was just having such a great time. There was all these people. Whew, the competition, that's nice.
For those who don't know, the 2018 robots were big carbon fiber, double jointed arm ones. So when they both went in auto, they like swung them up at the same time and then drove and then placed them both on the cubes on the scale at the exact same time. And the scale just stayed balanced the entire time, even though we put like 6 cubes on it total. That was pretty good.
That was really cool to watch.
Ours was set up slightly better because it kept picking the cubes up slightly faster.
So picky, so picky.
We have another viewer asking, what's involved in your after-match review process other than looking at match videos and mistakes that could be fixed?
Sometimes we feed Austin a banana so that he's healthy.
And not grumpy.
Yeah, there's really not much else to it other than watching the film and then saying, all right, we'll get ready whenever our next match is and do it again.
We try and project a positive attitude at when the match finishes and thank our partners, because it is fun to play with a good team, and so recognize that and celebrate that. Not quite in the match review part, but I think it's good to project kind of the culture you want to see and want to be part of, and that's very much a part of it. We're kind of the front of the team when you're out there competing. We're the people who get seen. So.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. What's one improvement in each of your opinions that first could make the drive team or competition experience better?
Get rid of stuff in the middle of the field so that we can drive really quickly, really long.
Increase visibility.
Especially the 2020 game. There's just so much stuff like cluttering the floor and like poles in the middle of the field. That's what is going on.
Oh.
For some reason, queuing always stresses me out. Like, are we going to get there on time? If you queue when everybody asks immediately, you'll end up there like 20 minutes early. And then if you wait a little bit, sometimes you can like end up wheeling out on the field, which is never what you want either. And like and then you're sitting there waiting for your partners to see if they're going to actually show up or not. And for some reason that just stresses me out. So there's got to be a way to help.
How would you fix it?
I think it's more about communicating, like
Okay.
what the status is, like how long do you actually have left. Unfortunately, that makes it easier to cut things to the wire, but it also makes it easier to know when you don't have to really beat yourself up and rush. And I don't know how you communicate when your partners are going to show up.
Sabina, do you have anything?
I mean, you know, not to be that kid, but it's pretty great. I had a great time. I didn't complaints. I got to meet new people. You know, that's my whole thing. I love people. You know, the experience. What more could I ask for? Free food? I don't know.
You had to volunteer to get free food. Just might conflict with drive team just a little. I don't know if anyone here can like really speak to this, but we have a viewer asking, what was the secret to success in 2009? And how has your team learned since then in driver training and practice?
I guess that's me. As someone who was there in 2009. We built another robot in 2009, and that year was just so simple from a robot design point of view. A lot of the robots, you just built them once and you did a couple fine refinements and played. And so I think we spent like 8 weeks practicing every weekend for multiple hours a day. And that really helps. And then the other part is everyone will always tell you getting to Einstein is lucky. So we had a really, I guess it was lucky, but unlucky Friday where I think we lost every match. And that put us down in the standings and people weren't seeing us performing. And then on Saturday, we started looking good, but most people had written us off. And then we got lucky to get on the #1 alliance because they saw that we were actually doing well, despite our standing, and didn't lose a single match that day. Yeah, I think we mostly took luck away from that one as our lesson learned. We've put a lot of, hard work always, but.
Yeah. Like the second part of the question was like, how has driver training improved since then? Or just like over time on the team?
Oh, I think we've done a lot better job with off seasons and stuff, getting people stick time and practice. And it sometimes we'll field like 2 robots or 3 robots through the off season. And sometimes we don't necessarily put our best driver candidate out there as a driver. We put someone that we don't know how they're going to perform and we want to learn if they're going to do better or worse. Because if you just keep, Einstein says, if you keep doing the same thing over and over, that's insanity and expecting a different result. So let's experiment, let's try and let's learn. So we do some of that. I'm trying to think of what else we've changed over time. Not coming up with much else.
All right, all good. Another question we have is, what criteria would put a team on your do not pick list?
Biggest one is penalties. If a team is getting a lot of penalties during matches, that shows that either their robot is breaking and hanging out, because some games have penalties for like things being outside of your prime perimeter, or the drive team is undisciplined or just doesn't know the rules, which is also a big problem. Because penalties can lose a perfect match that you played if your teammate's just out there giving the other alliance 1,000 penalty points.
I know that drive team doesn't get a huge say over the do not pick list. It's mostly the kids in scouting, objectively watching the field and being able to see how they're driving and stuff like that. But I definitely know that the times I've had conversations with people, it's been a lot about like the obvious things, and like sometimes you can hear them where they're like yelling at each other and they're very clearly, it's like not a very harmonious team. And although you can kind of get some of that out, sometimes it's like they're fighting against you, and it's not great.
And from my point of view, if a team agrees that they're going to do X and not Y, and then we find them on the field doing Y without, we all agreed on a strategy together as an alliance, and then they're going counter that, not in a little way, but in like a big way, really doing something that we had all discussed and said, we don't think this is the right way to succeed as an alliance. That one's my red flag. Because to succeed, we all need to communicate and work together.
I think, like, at least like from the strategy side, another red flag is like constantly getting in the way of your alliance partners is a big one. It's like, because it's sort of showing that you like can't navigate the field like very well, and then you're like hurting the other people on your team as well.
And sometimes you need a driver input on that, because like if I want to get to the left side of the field, but there's a robot in my way that shouldn't be there, so I go to the right instead. On film, it might look like nothing bad happened, but unless you know what the strategy is, you wouldn't see that there was a problem there. So from the drive team's perspective, the things that we can rule out are you didn't follow the plan or you weren't very fun to work with. Those are the biggest ones that we can really give information on.
And you can also like hear things happening, like it or not, everyone, you can kind of hear everyone. It's a huge open field, whatever. And I remember, walking past people and they're like, why did we get a red card? Like, I don't know why you got a red card. And I like told them, I was like, oh, it's in 2017. I'm like, you moved the pre-placed gears to get 4 rotors. You did not have that many gears. They were like, what? Like, we're not in the match with them, but you're sitting there, you're talking, and if we can tell that you haven't read the rules, that's a huge liability.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to what Bailey started with penalties. Let's see, what's another question we can talk about? Favorite memory from being part of Drive Team?
Einstein's was pretty fun.
True.
I don't know. We say that's fun. I actually get as much enjoyment out of the matches where we did something that shouldn't have been possible or was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like it's like 3v1. We have a no-show or like something happened and we're supposed to lose this one. Like, there's no question to ask, and we're like, you know what? We're not losing this one. We want to get them, and we just put it all out there and pull it together and succeed. And those are the fun matches.
In 2017, our finals of our division. 1690, yeah, he remembers. I see that face. 1690
so stressful.
Yeah, their robot was broken. We thought it was over, but we won with our backup robot and our second pick. Did we know that was going to happen? No, but was it so much fun to just go out there and try and like see a little bit of result, a little bit of hope? Woo, that was nice.
There were some other fun matches in like 2016 where we had an alliance partner die and we needed 3 people up at the tower on the batter to succeed, and they were on the other side of a defense. And so we're like, nope, they're going. So we pushed them over the defense into place on the batter and then climbed up and got the 4 RPs. It was like, that should not have been possible. But it was a lot of fun.
Okay, that's all the questions I had. So we can hang around for a few more minutes to see if anyone else has questions. Feel free to drop them in the Slido. Do you have any suggestions for driver drills for learning or training?
What do I always have you do, Bailey?
Practice filling up the rocket. We did that a lot. So many rocket drills.
Yeah, so we'll pick a drill like that and kind of measure ourselves against it. But also, I don't like set drills as much. I like looking at where are we struggling? If we're falling apart under defense, okay, well, let's get the defense robots out. Let's do this. if that's not our problem, we're having trouble using our vision system or something to align. And just we're not getting how it interacts together. Well, let's practice that. Let's get better at that. Or we're struggling at ground, picking up balls off the ground. One I'll do is if I feel like we're struggling at communicating, we'll just like change the strategy all the time through a practice match. We'll just say, hey, Bailey, middle one on the left, go. Next one's going to be bottom on the right. Like just start trying to work on our communication and getting us to gel as a team so that when we get out there on the field, we're ready to deal with all the weird stuff that happens and goes wrong.
It's also fun to practice like kind of weird things that you probably don't need in a normal match, but might be useful. Like one thing we did in 2019, because we were probably one of the only robots, if not the only one, that could choose which side we wanted a ball to roll to, because we could stick our suction cup inside the rocket and then rotate to which side we wanted. So I think in Utah we did a match, it's probably a practice match, but we filled up like the front side of the rocket and then the back side. And people were just looking at it like, wait, what are they doing? Oh, it worked. Oops. So like just kind of neat things like that, because even in like a real match, if we only have a hatch on and we're holding a ball and we're like, there's nowhere for this ball to go, okay, we can put it in one hatch. Like that's not a problem. So I'd say just practice kind of weird stuff sometimes if you're pretty well rounded on everything else, and sometimes neat little tricks will get you some points that could decide your match.
And sometimes like freak accidents happen during practice. Like I remember a frisbee fell like in between our bumper. We're like, what are we gonna do? And then I think someone reached to take it out, and then it was probably Austin who was like, don't take it out. Like, let them figure it out. What are you doing?
That sounds like something I would do to you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of those throughout the seasons where it's like something bad happens, and of course the whole pit crew is like, we gotta fix it right now, and they're like about to get on the field, and then Austin's like, stop. If it happens now, it's gonna happen some other time. So it's like if something weird happens, instead of like freaking out and like trying to fix the robot, like sometimes just that little added bit of just letting the driver figure it out.
What do you do when something like that happens during a match? Like a game piece stuck in the robot, or
Just figure it out.
Basically, spinning and running into walls is sometimes your best trick if it's laying in your robot. If it's on like an arm or something, you'll probably have to do something a little fancier. But if it's just wedged in there, you pretty much just go crazy and try to throw it out.
And then at some point, like from the coaching side, I look out and say, this ain't working very well. Like we're not going to pull this off. It is not worth us trying to continue to do this. And so run over to our alliance partner and say, hey, we got a game piece stuck in our robot. We're out of commission. You want to come back and score and we'll go do defense, or can we block for you? Or like, how do we continue to contribute to the alliance? Because the worst thing you can do is just kind of shut down and no longer help.
yeah.
Quick thinking is the most important skill for a drive team member, I think.
And how much of that like quick decision making is like driver versus coach during a match?
I would say under 5 seconds is generally driver. Under 5 or 10. Greater than that tends to be coach. Is that fair?
Yeah, little things like, do I want to drive forward and reverse or drive and do a U-turn versus, okay, we can't score on the left rocket anymore. I need to go all the way on the other side of the field. So like big strategy changes go to the coach, and then like kind of small stick to the plan but figure out a different way to execute it goes to the driver.
I don't know. I feel like over time we should try and figure out how to free the coach up a little bit more. I think we could be more successful if our coach was sometimes going and helping our alliance partners play defense, or expanding that role. Some of that depends on where we are as a team during each season. Sometimes we're really gelling and we're good. Like 2014, I always remember I just followed the ball. Wherever the ball was, I was standing behind that team. And so when our guys had the ball, I was there. And when they didn't, they played defense. And was gone. And I don't know, I always felt like that works well when you're able to have that level of freedom.
Yeah, how have you learned to like balance that as a coach? Like when you need to be coaching our drive team versus communicating with other people?
I think I coach our guys too much. You should know before the match from your strategy department what the risks are in the match. Do we need to really perform well as a team, or do we have this robot that's been getting penalties all the time? Well, if there's another robot that's struggling and we think some input over there can help, then hey guys, you're on your own. I'm gonna go hang out with them until they have it under control, and then come back or check in occasionally. But you can kind of direct your focus a bit before. But it's hard if you're focused on your own team and you realize the rest of the match is going poorly and you just didn't see it because you had tunnel vision. And that's really hard to break out of.
How do you like keep track of time during a match? Because there's like so much going on sometimes, and it seems like it could be very chaotic.
I wait for Austin to come tell me to climb. That's pretty much how we do that. We normally try to, like in 2019, we're trying to get that rocket ranking points. We're just filling up the rocket until Austin comes and says, okay, that's enough. We need the climbing ranking point. So that's more of a coach problem.
I used to carry a stopwatch, and then I got informed it was, I think could have been a personal aid or something at one point. So I need to find like a mechanical stopwatch or something, but it's useful to be able to look up, and you always want to know where your nearest clock is. So you know where to stand and where to look, because sometimes there's stuff in the middle of the field that blocks the view. And then try and check in every 10, 15 seconds and make sure you know where you are in the progression, and also know where the score is. Just kind of keep trying to monitor those, and then also keep checking in and seeing if that changes the strategy that we're executing, or if we should just keep going, or trying to figure out, do we squeeze another game element or game cycle in, or are we really so far ahead that it's not a good idea to risk that? If we're 50 points up and there's no way anything's happening, we'll go and climb a little bit early. There's no reason to push it. If it's really up against the wire, then you got to plan out, okay, how are things going, what game piece and where, and communicate that quickly and get that to happen, and then get it all to come together so you can finish right on the wire. We mostly pull it off.
How many climbs did we miss in 2019? I think we fell off once, and it might have been a practice match. I don't think we tried to climb and ever really ran out of time too much. We had a couple of really close calls where our robot would fall down and then tilt back as it got e-stopped when the match ended. But the springs pulled the stilts up and we were still sitting on the platform. And not
it was the inertia in the motor. As the robot was pushing down, it spun the motor up. And then when the wheels hit, the motor was still spinning. And so it sucked it up off the ground. We got so lucky.
The last question we have in Slido is Mrs. Shu. How about the robot tipping over at SAC in 2014? That was another memorable match.
Oh, that was nuts.
That was a sight to see. I was in the audience. I was so young. That was amazing. Oh, James Kuzmal has my whole heart for that.
Yeah, he actually did that all on his own. We were, to set the stage for those who were not there in the audience, we were playing along and we were getting a bunch of heavy defense played against us, and someone hit us hard, tipped us up, and then carried through underneath our robot. And so that's a red card for flipping. And they got lucky, or well, we got lucky that we fell on in the direction of our claw, and we fell in such a way that we could actually self-right. And so everyone counted us down, and we were like, we're not done. We got to figure this out. And so we started, trying things and pressing buttons, and found a way to get the robot back up. And the audience, of course, goes wild when something like that happens.
Yeah.
So, and then I think we won the match. I think
so.
It's getting fuzzy, but.
All right, that's all the questions we have. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to all our viewers for tuning in. Make sure and come back and check out the Spartan series for the rest of the week. We have a panel on online team presence tomorrow, and then we have Austin Software Talk on Saturday to wrap us up. So thank you again. We hope you enjoyed our Behind the Glass panel today.